As usual, before we start today's program, let us take a moment to pay homage to the perfect one, to the most compassionate one, to our teacher, who has strived endlessly over many eons to uncover the truth and with a sole determination to free all sentient beings from suffering. So it is in his footsteps that we are walking, and let us take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha and observe the 5 precepts. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Terasane. I have a small question before we start. Actually, no, that's how we start with this question. Let me ask you, 8:45, is that early or how do you feel? Is that early? Because when I was, a few years ago, when I used to live in the same life like you did, and even when I was a child and a teenager, we went to church on Sundays with my parents. And when I was a child, early childhood, there were usually 2 kinds of church services in the morning, Sunday morning. One was at 8 and the other one was at 10. And whenever my father I don't know who went to the church service at 8, but whenever we went, it was way too early for me. And I think at some point the 8 o'clock service was cancelled because no one used to go there. So I wondered last week, I wondered, for the people who come here, is it actually early or late or normal? On a Sunday morning at 8:30 you go to do something like this? Because, I understand that you wake up at, 6, 7, 8, maybe not at 6 on the weekend, I don't know. I didn't do that time. I guess it's very personal. Everyone has his own habits, right? It's okay. But since I'm in the monastery, the first day I came, so then from the beginning, we wake up at 4 o'clock, right? So that is how we do it in our monastic life. And at the beginning, it used to be hard for me. Not that I was someone who always likes to sleep long and wake up at 10 or something like that. No, I didn't. I was always a kind of a person, and I think when I look at you, I have the same feeling. You're always active people in society, professional, family, and many other things, right? So I was also like that. So when I used to study as well, I was a productive man, and I used to, especially in that time, I used to wake up early, but still, I don't know. 4 o'clock was another thing. So now, since I'm used in that rhythm, I always feel I know how I used to live in Germany and how people there, but sometimes I don't know what's happening here for people in lay life. Because I came to Sri Lanka and immediately I was in a monastery. So the first few days was hard to wake up at 4, but then I got used to it. And then it's no longer a problem. So the first thing that we do in the morning in our monastery, of course we wake up at 4, we wash our face, go to the washroom, we brush our teeth, we take our robe, we wear our robe, we offer a glass of water to the Buddha, we make a determination, we take our alms bowl and we go to the Dhamma hall. And then first we have a Dhamma discussion, or like Dhamma Sakacha in Sinhala, for 1 hour, 4:30 to 5:30. Because according to our teacher, that is an auspicious time. Because the Buddha was enlightened around that in the mornings, according to what I heard. I might be wrong, but something like that. So then our teacher believes that that is the right environment when we should discuss the Dhamma. Because one thing is our merits, right? We know that one thing is the merits we have, but we are not able to draw on these merits until a certain environment is created. Because unless that happens, we will not even know that we have these merits, right? Take an example with Angulimala as well. Nobody would look at him when he was a murderer to tell him he's a meritorious man. Everyone was very obviously probably saying that he's the man who's going to be destined only for one destination, and that is not heaven, not Nibbana as well, but most likely just the 4 great hells. That's what they saw, because that's the effect that manifested at that moment. But the causes beyond, that means the merits and the demerits, we can't see that. And when he saw the Buddha, and when that happened, a certain environment was created. And when that environment was created, the merits that he had done in this journey of samsara used to draw, and then he became a Sotapanna and later became Arahant. So that's also something you will experience when you come to the sermons, when you will be able to see or feel that. See, when we are here together and when we are discussing things like the Dhamma, and when we discuss everything around these actual things that matter in our lives, now then the samadhi that we feel, the peace of mind, has a different nature than the peace of mind we know from our normal life routine. So I think you can relax in your normal life, isn't it? Hopefully, sometimes. So what is the usual way that we relax? I don't know how about you, but I know I have seen people and I have seen myself. See, I used to be, after I finished my master's, I had this dream of traveling around the world. So for that I needed to earn some money. So I thought, okay, cheapest thing to do is I should move back with my parents. They were certainly happy about that. And then I should just take a hard job and earn as much money in the shortest amount of time. So what I did was I spent 3 months working in a post office. Not in the office, that would be nice, actually delivering parcels in Christmas time, in snow and cold winter. And sometimes people used to order 200 parcels and had to distribute them on the same day. And I was not very experienced, so that was terrible. Terrible at that moment, but of course now you can laugh about it. But so why did I say this? I used to work there. What was I talking before? Waking up in the morning, yes.
How to relax?
Relax, yes. Thank you. So, when these days happened, I came home and I was completely shattered. My body was screaming of pain from all these carrying parcels and hurrying up, and I don't know how many small accidents I had in these, maybe one or two, maybe two, small with the car, because when you're stressed and there's a street pillar, so things happen, but nothing serious, of course. But anyway, I was so tired when I came home, but physically I was tired. Mentally, I was still so much on fire. So much stress was there from the day, and so so what I used to do to relax then was I went for a run. My mother was looking at me and saying, "Are you crazy? Now you're still going for a run? Why do you do that?" And the answer is, of course, because I used to come home stressed, and of course my body didn't want to go for a run. My body just wanted to sleep. But the thing is, now even your body can be tired if your mind is not at rest, not at peace. Sometimes your mind will drive yourself crazy, and you will not be able to sleep, even though your body wants to really, really sleep. But mind is not peaceful. So then mind is so restless, then it doesn't let you sleep. So that happened. So to relax my mind, I used to run. That's what I used to do. And I think it's, of course, better than some other things people do. Some people, there are worse habits than running. And I don't want to talk about who is doing what. That's not important. But we can consider what are the things people do generally. What are things people do? TV is a great way to relax, isn't it? For some people. We can be honest to ourselves. We don't have to I don't need to know, and others don't have to know, but we can think about what are the things I do to relax. And TV is one of the things that people do, at least in my country, a lot. And phone, and going for a walk, meditating, drinking tea. That's what people do in Turkey. So when I was traveling around the world, I went through these Poland and Ukraine, these countries. I went with my bicycle, so I had all the time in the world to meet people. And when I met people in Poland and in Ukraine, the epidemic that they had, especially in the Soviet Union before 1990, was alcohol. Still is a problem, but they have so many men especially who just become drunkards because in the times of communism, everyone was equal, so they said. So that means everyone got his fair share of money, and you just have to go to work and do your job. And don't be too creative, and don't try to make your own thing. Just do what you're told and do it and finish and come home, and then what? So people had what they needed, but they didn't have the greatest luxuries in the world. They couldn't go and try out various things. Like my mother, she's from Poland, so she told me like how it was in the communism. So as opposed to Germany, where we have all the fancy things in the world, and people can always chase one thing after another and after another and after another, and that keeps them busy. Now, if that's not there, then what happens is you're living in a village and you have only one kind of bread, and you have butter, sometimes also jam, and in these days sometimes no coffee was there, and they had to suffer for that because they hadn't had no coffee. So that means people were just extremely bored with their lives, and then what they did was drinking. It was an existential drinking problem, I think. So that was what I met many. I met many people who told me stories like that in Poland and in Ukraine. where I went. Then I went to Turkey. And when I went to Turkey, everything stopped. No one there. I mean, when I went through the villages, Istanbul and big cities like these, I mean, these are just like Colombo, more or less. People do the same things here as they do there. Right? So people in the cities are rich, and therefore they do whatever they want, and they enjoy their lives, enjoy in air quotes. Right? But when I went to the villages, now there was no drunkard people at all. But what I used to find was all the men, 35 plus, they used to gather in these cafes, and they just, in Turkey it's called kahvesi. So what they used to do all day was playing backgammon, and maybe this, not chess, but the other game where you had to jump, when you have these checkers, yeah. That's what they do, what they did all day. And drink tea and be there with each other. And the wife at home has to take care of the children, and she's also, and so she will complain about the husband. What husband do I have? He's always going out and playing and so on. So I guess it's better to go to the cafe than to drink, but both is not good. But these are things people do to keep themselves busy, or to enjoy within air quotes, and to relax within air quotes. And I don't know how blind I must have been not to realize what's going on here at that time. I didn't see. I really thought one day in my life these people are enjoying their lives doing that. I didn't see what's happening beyond what was visible. I mean, we all agree, and I always knew that addicted people, they are not happy, they are addicted. So that was clear. But things I do, things that we all do, I mean, we have no problem. We do what we do because that's good. And people who go and playing games and drinking tea, they also don't have a problem because they're not addicted. But see, these addictions, what we call addictions and not, this is only a rough convention. This is a very conventional idea. If you would ask the Buddha, he would say, we are all addicted. Same. There's no real difference between an addicted person and us. Because for the Buddha, addiction simply means a mind that wants to see, hear, smell, taste and touch and think. So a mind that wants to do these things. So there's a wanting for these, then that is what we call as an addiction. In the deeper sense, I'm saying, right? So I mean, of course, conventionally, we can say that we are okay. But the Buddha would not agree with that in a deeper sense. He would consider us addicts actually. That was a dimension which I could not see at all at that time. So we were talking about this relaxing. Now there are good ways to relax, which means doing something good is always a good way to relax. Doing something for others is always a good way to relax. Because you will feel relaxed when you do that, but there will be a benefit coming out from doing it for someone else and for yourself as well. You will earn some merits. The merits will help you on your path to real happiness. So, which begs the question, merits and real happiness, where's the connection? Because I don't want to go too much into detail here, but I'm just going to say briefly, merits is not real happiness. Right? Merits which we do creates pleasure. Pleasure can be various kinds, but what is pleasure? See, when you do something good, when you help someone, when you cook for someone, when you offer flowers to the Buddha, even these things, when you And I'm not saying don't do them. I'm saying do, but understand. When we do these things, these are conditional experiences, which means this happiness is conditional. So when we do them, we feel happy for a while. When we offer dana, whether you give it, whether it's a merit to the Buddha or Dhamma and Sangha, to the Sasana, or whether it's a merit just like a good thing for someone, it doesn't matter, but it's a pleasure at the end of the day, isn't it? I mean, I used to cook for people and I like to do that. So it's a pleasure. But real happiness is, of course, should be an unconditional thing, isn't it? Should be an unconditional thing, which means that once you have this happiness, you don't have to keep doing it. You don't have to which means once you achieve happiness, you should be done. You should be done. But if happiness is something where you do something and after having done it, you fall back into suffering and then you need to keep doing something again, then that's not happiness. Then that's just a temporary absence of the feeling of suffering, right? So you have to distinguish between suffering and the feeling of suffering. Sometimes these things are mixed up. Because if I look at a person who, let's say, travels like me, or what I used to do, who's enjoying his life and going from one thing to the other. Today I'm going to travel through Ukraine. Next week, let's see how Turkey is. Let's see how Iran is. Let's see how this is, how that is. They're just going from one thing to the other and enjoying. I mean, usually does such a person feel a lot of suffering? Or when we are scrolling through our social media feed, is there unless you look very closely, would you call that suffering? No, it's a very enjoyable experience. So in one way, there's no such thing called suffering in that moment. The feeling of suffering is nowhere to be seen. But when you look closer, you will see suffering very, very much. You'll see there's the suffering there. Because the question was always, is it something somebody likes to do or something that somebody has to do? Are these things people like to do or things that people have to do? Scrolling through social media. Because how can you know? Well, the simplest way to find out is, if scrolling through social media, that might be something you or someone else that you know does, today's time, that's very common, and it's not an evil thing to do, right? But we'll talk about this more. So anyways, if it is something we like to do, that means we are free in doing it and not doing it. So that means, why don't you just try not doing it for a while? Just don't do it for a day or two and see what happens. Don't do it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. What will happen? If it's something you like to do, then you should be okay. It shouldn't matter to you. Because you do it just because you want to, not because you have to. But is that really how it is? Or aren't these things we have to do? Because you can stop doing it for a day. Okay. 2 days, 3 days. And then what's going to happen within you, within the mind? What will happen? Pressure is going to grow. Pressure, stress, vexation, these are all words for the same thing. So you'll be able to spot that. So a person who back in the day when I used to go on these teenage, what we call surfing excursions, like one day my parents had this idea I should go on and learn how to surf, wind surfing. So I was going on a trip for 1 week to Spain. And the thing is, we had to give in our phones. We had no contact to people for 1 week. So after that, everyone was so eager to get their phones back and check their messages and call their friends. So, because they like to do that. No, right? Can't be, because they have to do. Because there's a pressure that grows, and then you have to do. So in that sense, even a person who goes from one thing to the other, because the one thing that mind always likes to do is experience variety. Right? The mind always likes to experience variety, various things. So that means, if too much of the same thing for a while, that's not good. That's not enjoyable anymore. So the mind can't be happy doing the same thing for a long time. Looking at the same thing for a long time. Talking with the same person for a long time. Being alone too long, not good. Let me find someone to talk to. Talking to the same person too long, not good. So let me try something else. Right? So we always want a change. See, sometimes it's the same with music. You listen to this kind of music for a while. How many times can you listen to the same song? Then you want another one. Right? So, this week when I was in Colombo for some duties we had to do, we had to attend to some meetings. We went to, because some of the monks they're studying at a university online, so we had to go to that university, and there was a poster just outside our car. It said 3 movies, blockbuster in a row you can watch. And there was an event, so 400 rupees, 3 movies you can come and watch, and they are very good movies. And first you will see thriller, then you'll see love, and then you'll see horror. So see, variety. Because 3 love stories, what sounds better? 3 love stories or thriller, love, horror? Better, no? See, because variety is what's so important to our mind. So even if you understand this, to the extent we have discussed it now you have already understand. Actually, I didn't understand these things when I was most of my life. I wanted variety on the one hand, because that's not something you do. We are talking about a condition of the mind here, which is not something particular to you. So if you see that what happens with you is you want variety, then be very relaxed, and then you are just like us. That means you are a patient, according to the Buddha. So that's good. I mean, realizing that is the first step out of the problem. Because if you don't realize the problem, you'll do many things completely useless, and you create a lot of damage to yourself and to others by doing things which will not make any difference to the real problem here. Because when people don't know, so I used to want variety, but on the other hand, people told me things like, marrying one person, that's good, you should do that. Because on one hand, mind wants variety, but on the other hand also, there are these things like we want security, stability, reliability, and things like that. So it's a weird mixture. Sometimes these are opposite sides. And now the thing is, of course, imagine you marry someone because you really love this person at that moment, but then later on, what happens with the mind? Well, the pleasure you experience from something which you have is not going to be the same always, isn't it? We don't have to talk about the case of marrying here, take simple examples, just like listening to the same song over and over again. These are not things you will. I mean, if I give you your favorite song and ask you to listen to this 10 hours a day, I mean, I can torture you like that. It's not something it's not something where you'll find more and more happiness in doing that. It's a torture method, actually, in a way. So unless you understand the Dhamma, then that won't be a problem. But for a normal person, this would be a way to torture, because mind wants something else, and although the pleasure is big at the beginning, it reduces. The more and more you listen to, it becomes less. And then mind has so I don't know, but now that I understand this fact that mind wants separation, if I imagine I would be married right now, and I feel a desire for another person, because is desire something we do? No, the more you will understand about this nature of cause and effect, the more you will understand when certain causes come together. I mean, when causes come together and effect manifests. So feelings are not things we do. And wantings are not things we do. Wantings happen given certain causes come together. So we never decide to want something. When certain causes are there, views, point of views, what we think is valuable or what the mind believes to be valuable and what it sees and these things, then it happens, right? So that means we never decide to want something, because if you can decide to want something, if that is something you decided to do, then surely what you should also be able to do? Stop wanting something. Can you do that? You can't. Because just because you don't want it to be there doesn't have any impact on it being there, because the only thing that has an impact on it being there is the causes, right? So this dasta is here. Even if you don't want it to be here, will it move? No. But does it mean that it will be here forever? That you can't do anything? Does it mean you can't do anything about this? You can do something. What you can do is you can move it. Because the movement is what? It's the change of the causes. Right? So you can remove the table, or you can move it, or displace it. That is possible. So, but that has nothing to do with what you want. Right? So we have to distinguish these 2 points. So coming back to this point, what I wanted to say about desire, I know if I didn't understand these concepts, the Dhamma actually, I would judge myself. Why do I feel these feelings for someone else maybe? Why do I no longer love this person the same way I used to do? And I will be hard on myself because of that. And then that will just give me 2 problems. The problem that I have will still be there, and now I have a problem with myself as well. So what have I gained? But the more you understand your mind, the more you'll be okay with what happens. So there's nothing wrong with anything anymore. And that itself gives you back control. Because understanding the Dhamma means also that you'll have a form of control. Not the control that we always try to have on things, right? We try to control things in a certain way, don't we? How does our body look like? What do we eat? And the clothes that our children wear, and what they do the whole day. And I mean, sometimes we would like to control the whole country. We want to be the president. And all the decisions which happen. That is what our mind likes to be doing. But see, this Dhamma is not teaching us that we have no control and now that means we are destined to suffer. That's not the case. Because understanding this nature of cause and effect means you understand that there's always something you can do. But it's not about what you want or not. It's about the causes. So what we can do, for example, to attain Nibbana, there's something we can do. Which means we can bring together the causes. Which means we can work on that. But what we can't do is control the effect. Right? So for example, things I say to you today may make sense to you or not. Right? Generally the Dhamma can be very deep sometimes. There will be things which just fly on top of your head. It can happen. Or when I talk to you in French, moi je m'appelle Maître Théo, je suis d'Allemagne et j'ai 35 ans. Can you understand that? Well, some of you might be able to understand that, but you can't understand, even you would like to, isn't it? Because the causes are missing, isn't it? Some causes are missing. The views, memories, things like that. So, although the sound comes to you, the understanding of the language, does it manifest? Does the understanding of the words happen? Can you understand what I say? You can't. Why? Because some of the causes are missing. So that means now you can't understand, so there's nothing you can do. So just because you want to understand, now try harder to understand me next time. I'll speak again. So now try harder to understand me, okay? Encore une fois, je m'appelle Maître Théo. Maintenant, vous pouvez me comprendre. So, trying harder, will that make a difference? Not just like that. Wanting it more doesn't change anything. It makes you only frustrated and more disappointed. If you expect it should happen, you will be that much more disappointed. But nature doesn't care, isn't it? Nature doesn't care whether you want to understand it or not, because all that it cares about is what are the causes, how do the causes come together, that is going to be the effect. So when you understand that, you won't have a problem with not understanding. It's okay. You can't understand in this moment because causes are missing. But the effect of not understanding is also perfect. There's no problem with that situation. But if you want to learn, if you want to understand, can't you do something? You can always change the effect by doing what? By adding some of the causes. Bringing together the causes which are necessary for that effect. That is something you can do. Now imagine until next week, what you do is you listen to French. You listen to some videos. You go for a class. So what is that? Bringing together the causes. And therefore, when next time I speak to you, maybe, possibly, if the causes are there, you will understand. Or not actually, you will understand. Because what is your contribution in this now? What have you done and not done today and next week? What have you done now not to understand? What can you do now to understand? And next week when we talk, next week when I talk to you, is there something you do to understand what I say? Is there something you do right now to understand what I'm saying when I talk to you? Are you doing something to understand the words? When I say pen, you understand what I'm saying, right? But what have you done for that? What have you done to understand that? Was there something you did? Try not to understand what I say. Monkey. So what did I talk about? Did I talk about an animal or a city? You know the answer. Because that is not something you do. It happens. So this will bring us more and more into understanding our lives. That's all we want to do in here. I don't want to teach you a religion. I don't have a religion to teach you, because I'm not a religious man as well, although I am wearing a robe. But as I said last week as well, I was a scientist in my life. I never got the chance to work as a scientist, because actually, we can say better like this: the real science is actually Dhamma. If you ask me, Anicca, that's why we call it the theory of everything. But the conventional science, I never had a chance to work until my master's only. So I used to study physics and go into these quantum theories and Einstein's theories. These were the things I loved back in the days. And I used to learn about string theory and these kind of very complicated things. Very, very complicated. And I thought that's what I had to do to understand the world and to, find happiness as well. I did these things for happiness. But it's as fun as it was, my head was smoking every night. So I remember when I used to spend 10 hours in front of these integrals and equations. That's what I loved most, mostly calculating things. I came home and my roommate, he used to ask me questions like, what do you want to eat? What are we going to do today? Are we going out? Are we going to climbing or whatever the hobbies I used to follow at that day? But I couldn't function as a normal human being anymore that day. I felt like either I'm in this science zone or I'm a social person. I couldn't manage these two things together. But now it's different. So I'm not here to give you a big science and talking to you very deep things. These are not deep in this intellectual ways. See, the things I explained to you now, they were not complicated. So everyone can understand. Even when the Buddha was preaching to the audience, they were kids who understood. 7-year-old kids, they could understand. Became Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, Arahant sometimes. Because it didn't matter the knowledge. So Sopaka and Sunit and Sopaka, they also had no education whatsoever at that time. But they understood the Dhamma. Because it's not about knowledge, intellect, so much so it's not about the knowledge we have. There are these called Pancha Indriya, I think. Is it correct? Five indriyas, yes. So when the Buddha talks about these Pancha Indriya, he talks about how we have what we have to have, what are the qualities our mind has to have in order to practice and attain Nibbana. So one of the qualities he talks about is this prajna. So what does that mean? It means the ability, wisdom. So it's the ability to make sense of the things and contemplate on them, I would say. So what I say to you, your mind needs to be sharp enough to make sense of it. But see, for example, that was when I used to go to university. I think that was something I had more than enough. That is what I used to practice all the time, prajna. So prajna doesn't have to be. It doesn't. So it means simply, this logical way of approaching the world, not just blindly believing things, but trying to make sense of things. So that's what you have to do even when you're here, just because otherwise you will just sit here and say, whatever the Swaminatha says, I will accept it, I will do it. That does not work, because on somehow you can accept things, but your mind deep down has some beliefs, and unless you prove to your mind what's real, you won't be able to change your mind's feelings. So that means you won't be able to experience this freedom of Nibbana. So we need to have this quality, prajna. Some people have it more than others. That's okay. And this is not the only thing. See, I always thought I was a brain person. let's say. But the Buddha said brain persons will not attain Nibbana just because they have a brain. Scientists, just because they know a lot of science, doesn't mean that they're going to attain Nibbana earlier. Because what we also need to have is this heart component, we could say. So there are more than one faculty. What are the others? Saddha, Virya, Sati and Samadhi. So that means these should be balanced somehow. Right? So things like empathy, caring about others, and seeing suffering of others and not being okay with that. Whenever you see somebody having a problem, it shouldn't be just like, oh, don't care, it's not my problem, I just go and do my things. But if there's something you can do, you have to do that. So we have to be sensible for these situations. Right? That is where the heart comes into play. And then of course when these things are aligned properly, that's how you can achieve best results. So that's how I understand. Because it's also cause and effect. So for this realization of Nibbana, we need lots of merits, as we know. But that's not all. We also have to have this the right attitudes and qualities in our mind. But we can always work on them, because it's all cause and effect. So you can always add the causes, and then it will happen. So that's why the first step of this journey is, of course, merits. Merits will improve the attitudes and the pancha indriya, and then of course it will also make this understanding happen, because it's something that happens, not something that we can do. Just like anything else in life, actually is cause and effect. That's actually the thing we have to realize. Everything is cause and effect. There's no such thing that we do. I'll give you another example. Actually, I still want to talk about this happiness a bit more. But before we do that, I'll just give you this one small example. Because we are trying to understand anicca. Why do we want to understand anicca? Let's just come back to the basics. Why do we talking about this cause and effect now? I gave you this understanding that understanding these things will release your mind from this expectations, that things that you think you should be able to feel, right? Don't you feel that there's things you should feel? Why don't I feel the same love, for example, to this person than I used to do? So when you think that something you should feel that, I mean, actually, by that amount, you're already much better. You're already a good person. If you try to change yourself, that's better than trying to change the outside world. So there are people who no longer love another person. Let's imagine there's a person, he no longer loves another. So what's the easiest thing to do? Change. No, that's not the easiest thing to do. I mean, I don't know which sense you mean accepting, but let's say there's a person who says, I don't love this person anymore, so that means I just go and find another one. That is the easiest thing to do, maybe. Maybe the very easiest thing to do. For us as ignorant minds, we would do that. I mean, that is the most average behavior. That is, let's say, the mindset of strengthening the self. And actually, that is exactly the worst thing you can do, but it's the most easy thing to do. Right? Just, I no longer love this person, so let me change. Let me change the outside world so that it fits the way I like it. I don't want to say a bad person, but this is a bad attitude. Because we have these attitudes as well, sometimes. In bigger or smaller ways, we have these attitudes. Then there's a good attitude. What is the good attitude? I think that was the point you were trying to make. It's okay. Or, how to say, we could say, now first accept that it is there, but full acceptance, that's not full. Full acceptance would be Arahant or the Dhamma way. But what I used to do before, what I would do before was like this. Why don't I feel this anymore? I should feel it somehow. Why? Because I want to be good. I want to be good to others. I promised something, so I should deliver. So now there's still an attempt to change something, isn't it? Before that, what did we want to change? The outside world. Change the person. Now what do we want to change? Ourselves. So that is good. So a good person always, or a good attitude is always to try and change yourself. Always trying to accommodate yourself to the situation. That is what a good person does. And then we come to a great person. So there's not persons actually, attitudes. Bad attitude, good attitude, great attitude. So the great attitude is to understand that is the effect because of the causes that come together. So then there's no need to change anything, because there's no trying to be someone. Right? When you understand that everything in this world is perfect the way it is, whether something is there or not, whatever actually manifests is perfect, you wouldn't try it. There's no need to change anything or be someone or play a role, something like that. Then you'll be okay with that, and there's also there wouldn't be any vexation in our minds. So it's something like that. So then that is full acceptance. Full acceptance is simply to understand the nature as it really is, the nature of cause and effect. Then you will not feel there's a problem with this. So I'll try to give you another example. See, when you look at this pen, before we go in there, understanding the Dhamma at the end of the day is what's going to heal our mind from this disease which we have. What the disease is, we are going to understand this disease as well. I was talking to you at the beginning and told you this wanting to experience variety is one of the ways that it's showing itself. Right? Variety. Now, when you look at this pen, don't you feel that this pen has the ability to write? So that means the pen can write, right? That's how we usually feel. This pen can write. Can this pen write? I mean, if this pen can write, so if writing is something the pen does, then should I not be able to write in the air? Like this? The pen can write, so let me try and write. So does something happen? Writing doesn't happen. Why does writing not happen? Because you need a book. Yes. So then who can we give credit to for the writing? Why do we give credits to this pen but not to the paper? Because we say this pen has the inherent intrinsic ability to write, isn't it? We feel like that. But actually, writing is not something can be done by one thing. It's many causes which must need to come together. It's a process. Writing is a process that happens when certain causes come together. Which of these causes is more important? All of them are important. Yeah, the person who writes means the hand and the movement and the pressure and And of course, depending on what we want to write, there will be certain instructions. I mean, like when you want to write hello, that means there's a certain idea in the mind, right? And then it translates to certain body movements. So of course that's also a cause, right? Body movements are also a cause for this. Yeah, of course. So that's what we call kaya sankhara. But however, you need many causes to come together. You can't just say the pen can write. The pen is what writes. Because, well, take away the paper, so what? What's going to happen? Writing won't manifest. So all of the causes are important for the result. But this is not how we experience the world. Right? Because we experience there's someone who does things in here as well. So for example, can you breathe? Can you breathe? Yeah? Without air, can you also breathe? So then can you really breathe? Because for breathing to happen, you need air, you need lungs, nerves, brain. So these things have to be there. See, if I cut one of the nerves in your body, as much as you want to breathe, it won't happen, right? Or can you still breathe if I cut the nerve from brain to lung? Would you still be able to breathe? No. That means when you breathe, what are you doing in this? Even then you're not doing anything. All that's happened is the causes come together. The causes are there for that to happen. So actually even we live our lives most of the time until now thinking that there's something I'm doing, but actually what happens is causes are coming together and manifesting an effect. But that's not what we feel, because we have this disease called jati. So now we have to explore these things, but what will happen, the more you understand what's really going on, you will stop feeling more and more. I mean, ultimately an arahant is a person who no longer feels that there's a pen that can write, but he will understand writing is not something done by someone. Writing happens when causes come together. That's why we call anicca is simply the theory of hetu paticca sambhutang. Hetu paticca sambhutang means hetu means causes, paticca means come together, sambhuta means effect manifests. So everything has that nature, or very simple, that is nature. Hetu paticca sambhutang. When we understand this more and more, then we'll understand everything is a process. The body is a process. The mind is a process. Your relationship is a process. Your child is a process. Society is a process. All of these things are processes. That means, and when you understand it like this, then the suffering will no longer be there. And also, one thing which I wanted to continue from last week, happiness, or better to say, pleasure. Do you know what I mean when I say pleasure? I talked about it at the beginning. This conditional experience of happiness. This conditional experience of happiness is also a process. Processes, I know you have an idea when I talk about processes. Okay, before so you also need to meditate, huh? Okay, good. So, processes, when I say process, you will have an idea what I mean, but I guarantee it's not going to be the idea that I mean. And there's no offense to you, because I was the same. Processes is something we think we understand what a process is. I said it the other day. Yeah, a river is something that is a process, and it's constantly changing and everything is impermanent. These are the ideas we have. But what I'm trying to say here goes beyond that, beyond the idea of change, to the idea of manifestations. It'll take me a while to explain this, but I'll try and explain this step by step. And I want you to understand why it's important to understand these things, right? So we go step by step. So I'll give you a moment to. I'm just going to drink some water, and then we can continue. Before we meditate, I'll try to explain you one point which, as I said, connects to this point. See, one of the biggest traps of this life, and one of the biggest traps in life is our desire for touch, smell, taste, seeing and hearing as well. But I focus, so the desire for these things. Desire is the cause of our suffering. Last week I explained it to some extent, the 4 ignoble truths and the 4 noble truths. So if you haven't seen that, you can watch it again as well. And I'm going to connect a little bit more. So then, why do we want things? So for example, why do we want to experience touch? Yes. Yes, true. See, when we, in the monastery, what we do, when the children come and sometimes when they do, what happens usually, the children, they worship us. As monks, right? That's normal. Even I think in society, children do that to their parents and so on. What usually then the parent does is they put their hand on the child. So when somebody touches you like this, how do we feel? Feel good. So there's a feeling of pleasure, isn't it? So that is the harmless example. There are many more touches we experience. A hug, holding hands, and kiss and so on. So we are humans and we like to be humans because this body gives us the ability to experience touch. And why do we want to experience touch? Because it feels good. Therefore, because we believe touch has happiness, we want touch. Therefore, imagine you are going to die and now you have no longer a body. Just imagine this. We don't have to go into the question whether there is a life after death and so on, but let's imagine you are here and you no longer have a body, but there's a wanting but without body, can you experience touch? No. But see, people, how much touching do you have to do in this life so that the wanting for it goes away? The more you do it, will it go away or will it grow? It will grow. So that means when you die, what's going to be there with your desire for touch? Is it going to be gone? Your desire for touch? Imagine you're still existing after death. What's going to happen to the desire for the touch? Is it gone? Are you satisfied? No, you still want to touch more. Especially imagine now I don't know what these goats are doing, but I can only imagine if these things are real, actually I want to cry when I think about it. But what happens is, what I'm being told is, of course, you'll see all these humans around you, and now you can go into wherever you want, because you're no longer bound by the door step. You can go in any house and see what people are doing. So the desire is still there, as much as it's going to grow only. So that means not having a body is a very unsatisfying state, isn't it? When you have a wanting for touch only. It's not an unsatisfying state as such, but when there's a wanting for touch and you can't, that's when you suffer. I mean, I don't know, if an arahant or if an anagami, if he dies and he's in the spirit, he's only in a mental spiritual state. See, he doesn't want to touch. So does he suffer? Because I explained this last week, we never suffer because we can't do something, right? Not being able to travel abroad, is that why people suffer? No, when they want to go abroad and they can't, that's when they suffer, right? So good, now we understand. So then this desire for touch is a problem, isn't it? Because it's there, it bothers you, you have to do something about it. However, as you try to fulfill it, it only grows, and that means after you die, then you can't fulfill this desire anymore. That means now the more you have to stay in this way, the suffering will only grow and grow and grow because you can't fulfill this desire. So what happens is, the mind attracts new energy, vipaka energy, created from our merits and demerits, forming another body to release this vexation, to release this pressure of wanting to touch. But the body that's going to be created won't have to be a human body. It could also be a body of something else, right? Because not only humans enjoy touch. Actually, yeah, so what I'm trying to say, can you see the danger of this wanting? I'm not saying touch is bad. I'm not saying touch is wrong. You shouldn't touch. Because we need to clearly understand this. See, in this society and in this world, there are conventions of the way we behave, and especially when it comes to doing something with a good intention. That means, for example, when your child does something good, you should show it this. You should touch, because that is how this child feels loved. And not just your child. The way I can't tell you what is right and wrong to do, but I'm saying touch is not the problem. I'm not saying touch is wrong. I'm just trying to make you understand. The wanting for touch is a problem, and the wanting for touch comes from the idea that touch is something which brings happiness. Happiness is in the touch. Happiness is in a hug. Happiness is in... So it's the touch of the parent, my father, which feels good. Right? So then now what we see, our mind objectifies, entities happiness. So for us, happiness has a source. Happiness has a reservoir, or in Sinhala we say Gavadava. So there's a source for happiness. So in this world, there are sources of happiness. For example, food is a source of happiness, as well as movies are a source of happiness. When you go out, if you trust your mind, it shows you many sources of happiness all over the place, right? So we feel sources of happiness, but then the Buddha tried to explain us there are no sources of happiness, because happiness is a process. How to understand this? Look at this light, for example. The light that you see here or there, whichever light, or the TV, the lights in the TV, where does that come from? Show me the storage. Show me the reservoir. Where is that light stored? Can't find? Can you find it somewhere? Where did that light come from? From the wires. So the light is in the wires. That light, does it come through the electricity? You need to yes, that's true. You need to have electricity, but if the electricity brings the light, then even if I take the same wire and I put it into, I don't know, a speaker, then the speaker should show lights. So for example, you take a fridge. When you buy a fridge, it is at room temperature, isn't it? It's room temperature. You can't find anything cold in the fridge. Wherever you look in the engine, there's nothing cold. Now you put it into the electricity. What will happen? 10 minutes later, 1 hour later, it's cold. Where did the coldness come from? See, can you point a reservoir of coldness? So, in other words, the coldness is stored in the electricity, and now what happens? It comes from the electricity into the fridge, or it's stored somewhere in the fridge, and now it comes out. So, if there's a storage of coldness, that means one day when the coldness is completely used up, it stops working. That's not how it works. So there's no storage of coldness, isn't it? So, because when the causes come together, the effect manifests. See, this is a pen, this is a pen, this is a pen. Now, what is this? Where did that come from? Which pen brought the triangle? This one? Does this have the triangle? When all three of them come together, these causes manifest a triangle. So that means this is just a pen, this is just a pen. But when these three things come together in this way, these three causes together, as long as they are together, so they need to constantly be here, then that manifests this shape. But this triangle is never something actually, let's say, created or fixed. In other words, when you remove this, where's the triangle? Was there ever a triangle which was created here? No. So the triangle is not a thing. It's not a thing, it's a process, because continuously the causes have to come together to manifest this effect. If one of the causes is missing, the effect won't happen. So it's like that. Similarly, you can't, so that means you can't tell me the source or the reservoir of the triangle, where it came from. You can't tell me where the light came from. Then happiness is also like that.
Isn't the source the mind? How to perceive?
The thing is, so when happiness happens, happiness happens when certain causes come together. Before that happiness is not somewhere in the mind.
The mind perceives it as an outside object and gives you that temporary happiness.
Yeah, so of course the mind, there are some causes with regards to the mind that are important for happiness to happen. But it's not that happiness is already in the mind before the causes come together. Because the causes coming together themselves manifest this effect. So, in other words, happiness is not something that comes from somewhere, from the touch. And there's very easy ways to prove that, because actually what happiness is nothing more than, and we have talked about it before, but because now I'm connecting it with this idea of, it's a process. Happiness is this process of release of pressure. It's a release of pressure. So when pressure releases, that's what we call as pleasure. It's a bit like this. Now, when you're driving your car and you're braking, when you're braking, when you're pressing the brake pad, what happens to the light at the back of the car? There's a red light, right? So while you're braking, in the process of braking, the red light is going to manifest. When you when you finished braking, when you stop, how much red light was created? Can you collect all the red light that you have created from your backlight and take it home and say, I have so much red light with me? How much did you create? Nothing. Because it was only when the temperature reduced, when the brakes were basically applied, that manifested. So in other words, so now this is the theory, but let me put it more practical. Imagine, see, if somebody touches you not for 10 seconds but for 1 hour continuously, will you feel the same happiness at the beginning than at the end? No. But if it's in the object, it should be like that. If the touch brings you the happiness, then it should be the same after 1 hour and after at the beginning. And how about different people? See, why is it that, for example, when some people touch the head of a child, the child feels very happy, and if others do that, and it feels less happy. And now, because for example, we really want touch because we think that touch brings us pleasure. But we need to understand two things. I think we won't be able to finish this discussion. I mean, there's many points to explain, but we go step by step, right? This is a journey, so it's not something we can understand in 1 week. But see, hugging another person, let's say, which person brings happiness to all? When hugging that person brings happiness to all? No one. There's no such a thing. Because it's not in that person, and it's not even in that hug. Because if the hug has happiness, better example is holding hands, a bit more innocent and a bit more easy to understand. Is there happiness in holding the hand of, which hand brings happiness? Holding that hand. So because we want, our mind thinks, oh, if I could hold this hand, happiness would be there.
It depends on how much you love that person.
But then how can you say it's in the hand? Because now you're talking about your love, not the hand. How can
But if a stranger holds you, you're not happy. But if your boyfriend holds you, you're happy.
Yeah. That means, actually, that is a good first approximation to answer. So already now you can understand it can't be in the hand. Because somehow it needs to matter whether it's a stranger to you or not, or if it's your boyfriend or not, isn't it? Because if it's in the hand, now it should be there for everyone. Good. Then let's ask the question, is it because he's my boyfriend that the holding hands is nice? So whenever this is a boyfriend, let's say there are two people in a relationship, and these are boyfriend and girlfriend, but let's say they just had a big fight. Let's say the boy has forgotten to take out the rubbish, or I don't know, any example. So now the girl is very angry. The woman is the opposite. The boy is very angry. The woman is very angry about the boy. And now what happens is, the boy comes and holds her hand. will she enjoy that? But they are boyfriend and girlfriend. So then...
Depends on circumstances.
So, if it is the fact that he is the boyfriend, if holding the boyfriend's hand is what brings happiness, we can't argue that it is true. Because then it should be true even in this situation. Right? Because the only thing that has changed was not the boyfriend. He is the same. His hand has not changed, his body has not changed, their relationships has not changed. The only thing that has changed is, in this moment, she's upset. Sometimes, maybe the boyfriend has actually not done anything wrong. So, for example, I don't know, maybe he has, so let's say, he brought the rubbish out, and then the other roommate brought it back in for some reason. And then the girlfriend comes home and sees, the rubbish has not been brought out. Now she starts to be angry on her boyfriend. Then the boyfriend comes home. So she's already angry. She thinks he has done something wrong, but he has actually not done anything wrong. And then when he innocently tries to hold her hand, she feels upset. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is, for some reason she's upset. Nothing is there with the boyfriend has changed whatsoever, but now she can no longer enjoy the touch of that boyfriend. So then, doesn't it show you that at least, the happiness of touch cannot come by any means from the outside world whatsoever? It's completely created in your mind. It must be. And another fact to prove this is, now if I were to sit you down somewhere and I would just blindfold you and I would play a sound of a lovely woman or man or your husband or your wife or whatever, person you love, I play the sound. But you don't know that I'm playing the sound, you think you just hear the sound. So what do you feel? She's there, he's there, around me. But you can't see anything. But you hear the sound. And next moment what happens is, you feel a touch on your hand. But the touch doesn't actually come from this person, it's just a random stranger I asked from the street. So who's actually touching you? A stranger is actually touching you, isn't it? But do you feel like that? You don't feel like that. You feel very happy. But that can't come from the touch, because actually it's a stranger touching you. But you feel as if, of course, you feel that he or she touches me, and that feels so good. But it cannot come from the experience, the touch itself. It's all down to what you think has happened and how much you want that to happen. So that's why you need to understand one of the key problems with this happiness that we experience in the world is, it's not in the world. It's always, we don't experience the world as it is. When you go through the street and when you see this tasty object there, and when you feel the beauty, the taste, happiness all over, you feel it out there, right? But the thing is, at that moment you're not experiencing the world out there. You're experiencing actually a mental cook-up, something the mind creates. It creates this illusion of happiness in the outside world. Because there's a process which fabricates this, because this mind has so much, it really wants to believe that happiness is actually a thing out there in the world. It wants to believe that. We understand this more and more, why that happens. But if you don't understand this, if you really believe taste has happiness and this happiness is there in the world, you will try to chase these things. But you will never find anything substantial. You have never found anything substantial. That's why we are still looking for it, right? Otherwise you would have found it by now, but it's not like that. So, because what we always experience the world, the mind always experiences the world through views. Views is so crucial. Views basically create the way the mind perceives the world. Now, for example, see, there are various religious symbols. There could be a wheel, there could be a cross, there could be a moon, right? These are various symbols. How is it that if I show you different symbols, you feel certain happiness for some and not for others? Is it because it's there? Which of these has happiness? Where do you see? So which of them has these things? Are you looking at the symbols actually, or are you just feeling your own mind? Because it's because of the views that you have gathered, I mean not you, but the views in the mind that shape this experience. Somebody who has gotten indoctrinated with this idea of this is good, this is good, this is good. Once mind starts to believe it, it starts to feel like that. And why I can explain this to you. I've already explained this to some extent, right? It's not there, however. Views lead to emotions. And when we don't understand emotions correctly, they strengthen the views. So we see something and we feel good about it. For example, you listen to this song and you feel good about it. Now what's the first thing coming into your mind? The song is really good. So then so the emotion leads you to conclude something about the song. Now then the song seems to be really good. Now of course then I should listen to it again and again. Now you're trapped. Because you haven't understood and interpreted this emotion correctly. You have interpreted it wrongly. You have judged the song wrongly. You're judging the song as a source of the happiness you're experiencing. But the happiness didn't come from the song. It was because there was views in the mind, right? So now we're talking about the mind, not about the song. There will be views in the mind at that moment which created certain expectations, and when these expectations were fulfilled, that's what you experienced. Happiness is meant nothing more than the fulfillment of an expectation.
Now, why are you saying when we now listen to the song that there should, if we can use the song without happiness is the song, because the mere song, that is what we're driving at.
The thing is, anyway, you can't change the way you hear the song. You can't just listen at the song and say, I won't feel happiness when I listen to the song now. You can't, because it happens. Causes and effect. But the thing is now, how do you understand what happens? Even when you listen to a song and you feel happy, ask yourself, is that because the song brought the happiness, or is it not just a process which happens when causes come together? Namely, what happens is, there was an intrinsic belief.
Perception.
This is not yet a perception. See, your mind has a belief that happiness is in the outside world. Based on that, expectations are formed. Based on the expectations which are formed, whenever there's an expectation, pressure or stress is created alongside. With every expectation comes vexation or stress. That is how the mind, this is the state of the mind looking for what it wants to experience. what it has learned, what it has come to believe has happiness. And now, of course, when the song comes and you listen to the song, what happens is what the mind was looking for, basically, that stress releases. It's the reduction of the stress. So out from this comes so when you listen to the song, you feel happy. But the thing is, how does that happiness happen? Is it something that the song brought? Or is it? Because in that case, you should be able to listen to the same song multiple times and always feel the same happiness. But that's not how it works. So what happened actually was a stress or a pressure which was there in the mind was released. This process of releasing of pressure is what we feel as happiness. So it's something that happens. That's why it's so very temporary. But it's nothing more than the reduction of stress. Because of something the mind was looking for. And when this emotion happens, if the mind is ignorant about this emotion, if this mind does not understand the emotion correctly, it'll go back to believe the song brought the happiness. So that means...
What is the emotion that should actually come in, not to bring happiness?
Knowing is temporary.
Not just, temporary is one aspect, but it's not enough. Because temporary can still mean, it's temporary, but it comes from the object. So then you can't get rid of the attachment just by knowing it's temporary. Because even though it's temporary, it feels good. So what's the problem? The thing is, you need to understand what is this emotion really, and how does it arise? Because the thing is, we have been indoctrinated by this world, by Asatpurisha Sevane, to believe happiness as something which exists in objects. When the mind has believed that, which we call ignorance, now it starts to form expectations. So it's no longer aware about the fact that happiness and generally anything in this world is a process. It no longer understands this point. Now it has expectations for things because they are reservoirs of happiness. Now it wants them. And when the wanting happens, the mind goes into a deep state of vexation or a deep void, a longing, which actually makes the mind very uncomfortable. It's like a pressure cooker which heats up. And when this experience the mind is looking for, when it comes, when it happens, what happens is this pressure cooker is being, the nozzle is being lifted. So when you have a pressure cooker, and it is highly under pressure, the moment that you release the nozzle, what will happen is this pressure will slowly go out. That is what we call happiness. Pleasure. It's merely the reduction of pressure. But that's not how we feel. We don't feel it as a process where pressure releases in our mind, although as in our mind itself, we feel it's an objective, pleasurable quality or property of the object. So when the object comes, it brings that, which is completely wrong. Nothing could be further from the truth. Only thing we have to do is understand and be aware about this. So I will have to give you more examples to explain you this process in detail, but we'll do that over the future. But it's a bit deep, not too hard to understand. But this is actually the Paticcasamuppada process in a way, right? It is because of the misunderstanding of this pleasure, which we attribute. It's actually like saying, you look at this light and you start feeling the electricity brings the light. Is that true? No. Not to say that without electricity the light can't manifest. That is true. But when we feel there is such a thing called a reservoir, we start to like the source where that reservoir is. So we like the touch. We always like the touch because of the happiness. I mean, actually, we never wanted the touch itself. But the happiness that we think the touch has. But then, funnily enough, we know that as much as we have experienced, nothing really has significantly changed in our lives. Because it's not in there. We just have to understand the emotion correctly. Because when you understand the emotion correctly, see, this is what happens when ignorance happens. It will strengthen the view that happiness is in the object, so the wanting will grow, so therefore this process will reinforce. So you will be trapped in suffering. Endlessly. You can't escape. The only real escape is to understand what this emotion really is. A process. Release of...
Reality.
Yeah. That's it. Not to change anything, not to stop feeling anything. Even pleasure is not something you have to stop feeling. But when you realize what it is, then you will fall out of love with pleasure. It won't be the thing that defines your life. And actually, when you realize it is merely the release of vexation, then you can't have an attachment towards the object anymore.
So simply, what you're saying is that for us to realize when we undergo pleasure, or for that matter even stress or whatever emotion, like just think that it's like, it's a short-term thing and it will go away, it will pass. And then to realize reality.
That is
attached or
yeah, I mean, see, when I'm saying process, it's not. It is true. It's temporary, but it's more than that. It's like see. When stress happens, yes, that is of course something that happens and it will pass. But when you can really come down to understand what is really happening, it's something that happens because of this process. For example, stress happens never because of the outside world, it happens because of a wanting which is there in that mind. When you come to understand about that, and the origin or the basis of this wanting, see, the way we normally live our lives, we'll have to do a reduced meditation today, but we'll finish after this point. So what we used to do in our lives when we feel this stress or pressure is we try to get rid of the pressure by doing something. For example, as I give you the example in the morning, you drink, you walk. That is the way we used to do. But see, when you realize the stress comes because right now there's an expectation for something in this world, an expectation for getting happiness from something in this world. All you need to realize is happiness is not a thing like that which exists in the outside world.
It's how we perceive.
Happiness is actually this pleasure is the biggest illusion in the world. There's no such a thing. It's just the release of suffering. There's nothing called pleasure. The release of suffering is all that happens. But we don't feel like that, so we feel it's a substantial, essential thing. Therefore, the wanting is there. But when you come to the realization that it's not something you can find in the world, that actually in this world there's only energy arrangements. We'll talk about these things later. There's everything in this world is neutral. When you realize that, that's it. Then you have solved the problem at the root. So to understand what I'm really saying, this is not something you can do you can, but I'm saying it can take a while to understand exactly the point. But we're going on the right track. See, all these little puzzle pieces I'm giving while I'm explaining things will help you to start to see things in a very new way. So I think there's many things you could learn from today. So you need to just try and make sense of this, and I think the best thing to do is keep doing as much merit as you can, and come back here a few times and try to make sense what I'm trying to explain. Then you will understand what anicca means. I mean, anicca is a hugely deep concept, but the more we understand it, the more freedom we will get, because then you will realize touch is actually, I mean, so anatta has many meanings, but one of the meanings of anatta means essenceless. That also has so many meanings, but essenceless means it is useless to chase. Something like that. But that has to be understood with wisdom. It doesn't mean don't do. It means realize that there's actually nothing worth to chase. That comes by understanding anicca and dukkha, because yad aniccaṃ tan dukkhaṃ yan dukkhaṃ tad anatta. So yad aniccaṃ tan dukkhaṃ tad anatta, like this. So anatta is the conclusion that you come to by realizing the Dhamma more and more. So this is what we're doing here. Yes, exactly. Wanting is a process that manifests because some causes are there in the mind to form this wanting. And we are going to investigate what it is little by little. But basically, the root cause is ignorance. Ignorance means...
Depending from outside the world.
Yes. Depending from outside world and completely misunderstanding what the actual outside world is like. There is an outside world, and I'm not saying nothing is there in this world. There is an outside world, but it's not the way we think it is. See, we think in this world there are good things that happen, bad things that happen. There's things there are beautiful things, ugly things, tasty things, not tasty things. But the more you will realize, not just that happiness is not something that you can find in this world. The only thing you can find in this world is actually, at the end of the day, we understand this more and more, is just energy, which means electrons and protons. They can't be beautiful, they can't be ugly, they can't be male or female, disappointing, they can't be tasty. Even taste, touch, are not even things which exist in the outside world. That's another. Colors. You think that you're looking at a red robe. So for you feel that you're living in a colorful world. We feel that we are living in a colorful world. But even the Buddha explained, color is not something you can find in the world. Color is also your mind. Actually, you're looking at your own mind in this moment. These things will take time to realize, but when you realize that you don't look at me, you're seeing your own mind here. Because these colors are not on this robe. These colors are created in your mind right now. But how do you feel? You're looking at the red robe, outside world. So there's a complete fallacy going on in the way you think the world is and the way it really is. But when you uncover this, now you'll be able now you'll realize, the actual world is much different than you understood. But however, when you find peace with that, or when you understand the beauty of that, because the real world has no death, everything is perfect in the real world. But in the world we think we live in, there's so much problems going on. Wars, and things get old, things get sick. The Buddha never came to tell the people that everyone dies, everyone will get sick. That is not something very profound. Everyone understands this, that everyone was going to die. For that you don't need a Buddha to come. He realized that death is only an illusion in our minds. When you understand this concept of anicca, you understand there's not something to die, not an entity to die, but processes. And processes are not something which can die. Processes are mere manifestations. Like, whenever you believe that, whenever we feel that there's more than these 3 pens here, create a triangle. So if you feel, see, when I do this, see, so the triangle that you feel, actually, is there a triangle here? Yeah? Where? Is there something that was created in here? Something more than these pens?
It's how you form it.
All I did was I put 3 pens in this arrangement. I didn't create more than that. I just put these pens and changed their configuration. I didn't do more than that. So all I have here is 3 pens. 3 pens. But of course I can change the way they're arranged. See, all I'm doing is I play with 3 pens. I never had anything more than 3 pens here in my hand. But there's more that you feel. Because you feel there's 3 pens and a triangle. This pen of the triangle, this pen of the triangle, this pen of the triangle. So this 4th thing, this triangle that you feel here, where is it? I have never had such a thing. See, that thing is it actually here? Because I had only 3 pens. In the shape of a triangle. But a unique, created, special, a thing called a triangle, that's something we feel. That's actually created in our minds. And these are the things which die. Okay. So let's leave it for the moment to understand there's something much more profound than what we see with our senses. By understanding this more and more, all that we are supposed to do, we don't want to become scientists, we just want to understand why do our problems in life happen and how to get rid of them. See, because expectations are always at the root of any problems in our lives. Because from expectation derives disappointment, stress, fear, grief, sorrow, and all these things. But by understanding, see, what we do normally is we do things to get rid of the stress. Running, watching TV, but these are always very temporary solutions, as you will understand, because you do it today, you have to do it again tomorrow, and again tomorrow, and again tomorrow, and there's no end in sight, and problem doesn't never goes away. But that's why the Buddha said, Tango Vadami Badangvo Yavante Samagata Tanhaya Mulankanate Usiratova Biranang. So Tanhaya Mulankanate. So that means go to the root of the Tanha. I mean, dig out the root of craving. So don't try to get rid of craving itself, that's not possible. Try to go to the root and remove it at the root. Remove craving at the root. That means remove craving at the root. What is the root of craving? Ignorance. How do we treat ignorance at the root? How do we get rid of ignorance? By coming to listen to the Dhamma and understanding the Dhamma. That's all you need to do for getting rid of craving. People, when they came to the Buddha, they didn't try to remove their craving. They just listened to the Dhamma and suddenly their craving was gone. Because they realized something. And when they were no longer ignorant, when one of the causes is no longer there for this wanting, then wanting will no longer manifest, because it's a process. You don't have to remove it. The wanting itself, you can't remove it anyways, because it's an effect. You can only try to remove one of the causes, and what the Buddha asks us to do is remove ignorance. Understand? So once you realize that there's no pleasure in the outside world to get, then the foundation of your wantings is no longer there. Because you can only want something when you believe that it has pleasure.
And if you remove the causes, will there be a feeling?
Of course not. You can't have any effect without causes.
That's what we're coming to.
Yes. So we can do 10 minutes meditation. So as I said, meditation means to us, to me, it's partly contemplation. Contemplation means applying these concepts to your life, and that means actually just like cleaning your mind through the Dhamma. And much more, but since I'm doing guided meditations, I think by coming to the sermons and following these, you will understand more and more by the time. Okay. One of the simplest way to explain meditation is to understand it as taking in the good and expelling the bad. So it does not mean not to think anything, It's about the right way of thinking. Gratitude is always good. Ultimately, meditation means to realize that mind is a process. Thinking happens. Just like writing happens. Because of causes. And you can see that there's one thing that rules this world more than anything else, and that is vexation. Which means that anything in life is not something we like to do, but it's you have to do to release vexation. Why do people go out for a drink? Why do they go in the movies? Why are there movies in the first place? So the world is a place where of the availability, the outside world is always to release the vexation which is there in the mind. What the Buddha tried to show us is how to uproot the vexation, how to seize it, not how to transform it. Because we are very good in transforming vexation. If we are sad, then we eat a piece of chocolate to feel good. So that's a transformation. It's transforming one feeling into another. That's how we think. the Buddha tried to show us to understand vexation as a process, just like a fire. So vexation has causes. When you want to extinguish a fire, actually fire is nothing more than coming together of oxygen, carbon and temperature. A continuous process of these coming together. So when you remove one of the causes, you will no longer have an effect. Right now also, for experiencing this pleasure, there's so many causes we have to bring together every day. And all of this costs us a lot of work as well. As they say, there's no free lunch. So everything has to be made. Everything has to be maintained. Even relationships have to be maintained. Because of course they also happen only because of certain conditions to be true. Our life is also a process. Certain causes have to be continuously supplied. We need to eat every day, shower, wear clothes, go to the gym. Because it is not a created life, it's a process. So we can never take anything for granted. Meditation is over. Okay. So I just can encourage everyone just to do as much merits as possible. I think that is the best thing to do. And we are going to finish today's program, the sermon, by sharing our merits, taking a moment to express our gratitude to all those beings who have made it possible for us to be here today and listen to the Dhamma and practice the path. First and foremost, let us take a moment to transfer all the merits that we have acquired today by making offerings to the infinite virtues of the Noble Triple Gem, inviting the Swaminathan to deliver the sermon by offering oil lamps, flowers, incense sticks, and water to the Lord Buddha, as well as listening to the Dhamma, contemplating on the Dhamma, and various other meritorious deeds that we have done. First and foremost, let us take a moment to transfer all the merits we've acquired to all the bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, upasakas, upasikas who since time immemorial have protected and preserved the sublime teachings of the Buddha and have passed it down through the generations of the noble lineage in the form of the Tripitaka, which is thankfully available to us to study, understand and comprehend the Dhamma. So also transfer these merits to all members of the Mahasangha present throughout the world, including the chief prelates of all of the chapters, who have dedicated their lives towards the noble path and have committed themselves towards the betterment of all sentient beings. Let us not forget that among them are the monks and nuns resident in your local temples and nunneries who have always been by your side through thick and thin, come rain or shine. Let's also transfer these merits to Guru Swami Nohanse, as well as all the monks resident at the monastery, as well as the Anagarika attached to the monastery. Let's also transfer these merits and express our gratitude to all those who make great efforts to disseminate the teachings of the Buddha, be that by transliterating these sermons, sharing them out with others, or inviting others to join them. If any of them have been born in a woeful plane, may they redeem themselves and be born in a blissful plane. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to our devotees, friends of the monastery, who for the sake of merits continue to sustain the Mahasangha, be that by supplying the four requisites, extending their know-how or their well wishes. Let's also take a moment to transfer these merits to each and everyone who has made these programs possible, the staff at the school and the organizers and each and everyone involved, whether it's big or small. May through the power of these merits they be healed of any physical and mental ailments and overcome any obstacles to their spiritual progress. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to our mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews and nieces, our elders, friends and acquaintances, employers, employees, and to all those who've helped us and supported us and assisted us in this infinitely long journey of samsara. And let's also transfer these merits to our teachers. May through the power of these merits they be healed of any physical and mental ailments and overcome any obstacles to their spiritual progress. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to the Devas and Brahmas, spirits and demons, primarily the Sakradeva, as well as all the numerous gods and deities who are committed to protect and fulfill the Sambuddha Sasana. Let's also transfer these merits to our guardian deities who keep a watchful eye over us and keep us out of harm's way. May through the power of these merits they prosper in divine power and wisdom. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to our ancestors, all those who have predeceased us, all those who have been family and friends to us in this infinite long journey of samsara. So also transfer these merits to all members of the armed forces as well as the police forces who have sacrificed their lives to protect the peace and harmony of our nation. May all those who lost their lives in the war, be they friend or foe, rejoice in the merits we've acquired today. So also transfer these merits to all those who lost their lives in natural calamities such as tsunamis, earthquakes, landslides and pandemics, reminding ourselves that among them will be those who've been family and friends to us in this infinitely long journey of samsara. May through the power of these merits, if any of them have been born in a woeful plane, they redeem themselves and be born in a blissful plane. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Finally, let us all resolve that may through the power and blessings of all the merits we've acquired throughout the day, we be able to witness the advent of many hundreds of thousands of arahants on this blessed land. And finally, let us all resolve that may through the power of all the merits we've acquired today, you and I and everyone who has helped to make this program a success, become an Arhat Hanse, an Arhat Mahinin Hanse in this very life itself, and in the era of the Gautama Supreme Buddha itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now the Mahasangha will transfer their blessings to you. Raga ginin midetva, dvesha ginin midetva, moha ginin midetva, Nibbana parama sukhayan sukhita tharavatva. Nibbana parama sukhayan sukhita tharavatva. Nibbana parama sukhayan sukhita tharavatva. Mamada siyalu loka siyalu satvayo. Nibbana parama sukhayan sukhita tharavatva. Nibbana parama sukhayan sukhita tharavatva. Raga gini niveva, dvesha gini niveva, moha gini niveva, nivan sapa labheva, nivan sapa labheva. Tunuruange suisi ananta mahaguna belen siyalu loka siyalu satyo nibbana parama sukhin sukhitara vettva. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.